Greetings, and welcome to LA Quill. Today we're diving into Chapter 33 of Arianna's tale. Pulling another weed from her herb garden, Arianna sighed. It had been 7 weeks since Damuk had left, and she was getting worried. Even though the Emperor assured her that he would know if something had happened to his son, she couldn't banish her fears. She had hoped he would be back by now. She was not quite 6 months pregnant, and she missed him terribly. The plans for the wedding were completed. The only thing that was holding up the wedding now was the absence of the bridegroom. It was hard to get married without the groom. Arianna wanted to be married before the baby was born. However, she was worried that if Damuk didn't return soon, they would have to postpone the wedding until after the child was delivered, purely due to her health. She'd been quite ill the past few weeks, and constantly had a horrible pain in her back, and she was incredibly tired all the time. She only spent a few short candle marks out of bed now, at Faeline's insistence. Between the ache in her back and how drowsy she had become, Arianna didn't protest over much. Besides, she kind of enjoyed lying in bed with Lenora, even though Damuk had said to keep the wolf out of the bed. If he's not here, it's not his decision, she reasoned. Finally finished just as high noon approached, she struggled to rise. Myron was only a short distance away, and he helped her to her feet. She'd become fond of the commander during the past few weeks and could understand why Damuk trusted him so. He was easy to confide in, unobtrusive when he needed to be, and utterly dependable. And he honestly felt as if it was the greatest honor to be guarding his prince's betrothed. That made it much easier to be around him since he didn't resent having to look after her. She smiled her thanks at Commander Myron and started back toward the palace. She hadn't taken 10 steps when she heard a horn from the direction of the palace gate. Arianna turned to Myron, a question in her eyes. For his part, Myron listened for a few instants. He recognized the pattern immediately. Looking at Arianna, a twinkle in his eyes, he said, "It's Prince Damuk. That's his battle victory song being played on the horn." Arianna immediately changed directions, heading toward the gate instead of into the palace. Myron kept pace with her, ready to catch her if she lost her balance, which happened frequently these days. "I've never heard the horn before, and I've entered the palace with Damuk several times now," she commented. "The victory song is only played when returning from a battle. A successful battle," Myron explained. "The raid on your village was not a battle, only a slave hunt, which is hardly the same. And every other time you've entered the city with the prince, well, you had been running away, and that hardly counts as a battle." At that moment, they came within sight of the gate. Arianna increased her pace when she saw Damuk dismount. The relief she felt was incredible, and if her back hadn't pained her horribly, she would have run to his side. Damuk saw her, smiled, and moved quickly towards her. Not quite running, but not far from it. He had a little more pride than to dash across the marble walk. He wrapped his arms around her, and she melted into his embrace. They stayed just like that for several moments. A throat cleared beside them, and they both turned and saw the Emperor standing just a few feet from them, a slight smile on his face. Neither had heard him approach. The lovers pulled apart, but only slightly. "As you see, Damuk," the Emperor said cheerfully, "we have kept your beloved safe." The three of them started up the palace steps. "It's good you have returned with such speed. I think the lady is anxious to be wed. She says as much most days." Arianna blushed while Damuk chuckled. "Well then, we must not keep the lady waiting." He would have said more, but he noticed her sudden intake of breath and her hesitation on the stairs. "Are you all right?" he asked with concern. She nodded, saying nothing for a moment. Finally, when she caught her breath, she whispered, "I'm sorry. My back is a little sore, and the stairs don't help." She noticed the concern in both their eyes and felt a little guilty for causing it. Even after the last 4 months, she still wasn't used to others really caring about her well-being. It had always been her job to care for others back in Akana Valley. Damuk took the matter into his own hands and swung her into his arms. He ignored her assurance that she was able to walk without his assistance. "Do you need to lie down?" he asked, continuing up the stairs. Arianna shook her head. "No, but I would like to sit down for a while." She wrapped her arms around his neck and leaned into his chest, giving up her protests. She really felt safe for the first time in weeks. She knew that both the Emperor and Myron had tried to make her feel comfortable and safe, but she felt neither when she was apart from Damuk. The trio entered the palace and made their way to the Emperor's study. Damuk set his precious burden carefully on the couch against the wall. He covered her with a warm blanket and brought her some cool water to drink, remembering that wine had been making her nauseous when he'd left several weeks ago. Arianna smiled her thanks as he settled next to her. She rested her head on his shoulder, grateful that he was home. She would be content if they could just stay like this forever. Well, the Emperor began, seating himself behind his desk. Now that we're all settled, what about this wedding? Damuk held his betrothed just a little closer. I'd like to be married today, but I think Arianna is exhausted. Tomorrow, if you're up for it, sweetheart. He looked at her with a question in his eyes. Tomorrow would be best, I think, she replied. She too wished they could be married today, but it wasn't possible. Even if she hadn't needed rest, it was a little late in the day to hold an impromptu wedding. Orion would absolutely die from the shock of it all. Orion was Rockin's first chancellor. He'd been in charge of all the wedding preparations. He had been Arianna's coach when it had come to all matters regarding the wedding and the coronation that would follow. He'd done a very good job, too, since Arianna now felt confident that she could get through both ceremonies without expiring from pure terror. If they announced that they were marrying right now, today, well, Orion was old as the hills, and his heart might give out. Rockin was shaking his head. It must be at least 3 days. He looked at his son. She must spend 3 days apart from you prior to the wedding. You know that, Damuk. So tradition states, Damuk agreed, not particularly distressed. He had no intention of letting tradition keep him from Arianna's bed, not now. But it's not law, and I've never cared much for tradition. He held up a hand to forestall any arguments his father might present. The primary purpose for that particular tradition is to ensure the bride's purity. It's a little late for that now. His hand drifted to Arianna's expanding belly, evidence of her pregnancy. Anyone would see just by looking at her that she carried his child, and they'd made no secret of it in the past weeks. Damuk himself had deliberately informed the court when she'd first come to the Empire. Arianna spoke up. I'd rather not wait. It wasn't that she thought Damuk might call it off if they waited too long. Just the opposite. She was more worried about herself. She wasn't sure that she would have the courage to walk down the aisle if they waited. Rockin gave a resigned sigh. Orion will not like this. I'll leave it to you, Damuk, to inform him of when the ceremony will be. The Emperor settled more fully into his chair. Now that we have that settled, what about the Muradin? Damuk removed the box holding the dagger from his doublet. It will attack our ships no more. Handing the box to his father, he continued. Sybil did indeed have her own protections upon the creature, but that dagger was able to nullify them. Accepting the box, Rockin raised an eyebrow, noticing how vague Damuk's initial statement was. The creature is dead, then? Damuk shook his head. There was no need to kill it. There were compulsions upon the beast, set by Sybil, I assume. Once I had released those, the Muradin was more than happy to return to its home in the deep. He watched his father's eyebrow raise just a little more. Damuk was disinclined to fully explain what had happened, so only said, The dagger has some interesting properties. We should try it sometime. Arianna didn't really understand all this talk about a dagger, and she didn't care. She was just glad that her lover, soon to be her husband, was home, and all in one piece. Her head was starting to feel heavy, and she knew that she should be in bed soon. Damuk noticed her eyes starting to drift shut and quickly rose. By your leave, father, he said quietly, gathering Arianna in his arms. He saw his father nod and wave his hand, and Damuk quickly headed to his, their, bedchamber. Once his bride was safely in the care of Faeline, he recalled that he hadn't asked his father about Sybil and Icon. Damuk growled in frustration and began pacing wildly about the room. His father waited, letting him calm down before even attempting to speak. When his son was in this mood, there was no talking to him. There was still no trace of Sybil and Icon. None of the mages had been able to trace the final destination of the portal that had carried the two away from Crown City. Word had been sent across the Empire, but no one had seen either of them. It wasn't easy to hide from Imperial mages, so either they were so deep in hiding that they would never come out, or they'd left the boundaries of the Republic entirely. Rawkin wasn't willing to devote truly valuable resources to their pursuit, not when there were so many other matters that needed attention. After several moments, Rawkin spoke. "We're still looking, son. If they are within the Empire, we'll find them. If they are not, then they are hardly a threat to Arianna or to your son." Damuk stopped pacing to listen to his father's words. "Sybil isn't crazy enough to try anything now, not with every guard on alert. I've even assigned Arianna her own guard, which Myron commands, obviously. She's safe, you can be sure of that." "That's not the point," Damuk retorted. "Or at least that's not the entire point. I want Icon. He deserves to die for what he tried to do to her." Rawkin was about to say more, but Damuk's face suddenly went white. He whispered, "Arianna," and took off running. His father didn't try to ask questions, he simply followed on the heels of his son, knocking over his chair in his haste. Together they raced through the palace, up the many flights of stairs and down the halls, until they came to Damuk's chambers. Several of the guards had followed. They were unaccustomed to seeing either man running through the palace, and so knew something wasn't right. By the time they reached Damuk's chambers, they had 11 guards at their heels. Damuk threw open the door to the outer chamber. The 2 guards stationed there looked shocked at his hurried entrance. He didn't stop to question them. He opened the door to the bedchamber and stopped short. Arianna was gone. He had known that on some level before he even opened the door. The bedclothes were strewn around the room, and Lenora was in a heap beside the bed, obviously bleeding and unconscious, but there were no other disturbances. There was the barest trace of a portal, glowing red to his mage sight just beside the bed. It was quickly fading, and was quite obviously blood magic, where they both would have sensed the energy disturbance. The 2 guards responsible for her safety dropped to their knees, anticipating the worst. Their prince's betrothed had been in their care, and one of them should have been on the veranda instead of inside. They were both fairly certain their lives were forfeit. His father came up beside him. No one spoke for several moments. Finally, Rawkin said, "I'm sorry, Damuk. I never thought they could get her here. I should have had her watched more closely." He eyed his son carefully. "How did you know that something was wrong? Even I couldn't sense anything." Damuk heard his father's questions distantly. Everything seemed to have slowed down. He needed to think. Absently, he wandered over to Lenora. Arianna loved the wolf. He wanted to make sure she was well cared for. He lifted the wolf onto the bed gently. For some bizarre reason, that small act made him feel better about the whole situation, if only slightly. He suddenly remembered his father's question and answered slowly, as if he were partially in a trance. "I don't know. I just knew." Rawkin raised an eyebrow. His suspicions about Arianna and Damuk were finally confirmed. It was a Soulbond, which is why Damuk had become so obsessed with her. He sighed. Finding her would be complicated, but possible. "Well, come on." He turned and left the room. His son followed out of long habit, confused and a little angry. He wanted to be looking for Arianna, not following his father through the palace. "Where are we going?" He knew that his tone was far from respectful, but he didn't care. The Emperor didn't even look back. "We have to find her, of course. My chambers are the best place to do that. We'll use my scrying crystal." "But your crystal hasn't been able to show you either Icon or Sybil, no matter how hard you've searched," he reminded his father. "What makes you think you can find Arianna?" The Emperor smiled slightly. "I have an advantage now. Your bond with her will allow me to find her. It might take a while, but we will find her. And then we'll rescue her." "My bond?" Rawkin looked at his son, amused despite the intensity of the situation. "Haven't you figured it out yet?" He actually laughed as his son's expression became even more confused. "You're soul bonded to the girl, Damuk." Damuk stopped dead in his tracks. That thought had never occurred to him. Now, however, it all made a certain amount of sense. His intense attraction to her, his knowledge of her whereabouts without any real effort on his part. Everything supported the Emperor's conclusion. His father continued toward his chambers. And that's our tale from L.A. Quill today. If you enjoyed this chapter, let me know your favorite moment in the comments. Until next time, may your stories always be magical.